issue, so we're waiting for that to resolve itself, and we'll get started. So if you could give us just a couple more minutes, we'll get our webinar rolling. Again, welcome to everybody who's logged on. Looks like we've got some more coming on as I'm speaking, so we'll be ready to go in just a few minutes. Getting close, Amy. Well, since we're still waiting, I tell you what, normally at the end of the webinar, I give you a fantastic list of things that are coming up in the future. I'll just go ahead and give you that rundown right now, and then we'll be able to sign off a little more quickly at the end of our webinar. But just to let you know some upcoming events, we've got an Engaging Your Community event coming up at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Bonduelle, Wisconsin. That's going to be this coming Saturday, and then next Saturday, or a week from Saturday, I'll be at Concordia Theological Seminary in Fort Wayne doing a rural ministry module. Beyond Mayberry, I think is what they named that, but we'll be doing that module, and following that module in November, we'll be doing a seminary immersion, our second one of those, so we're very excited about that. I'll also be the following Saturday, last Saturday of the month, I'll be up in South Dakota at St. Paul's in Freeman, South Dakota. We'll be doing a rural ministry conference up there, as well as I'll be attending or helping with a mission festival in Mitchell, so maybe I'll get a chance to whiz by the Corn Palace in Mitchell, South Dakota. And then upcoming webinars, Using Technology for Ministry, KFUO Radio is going to be joining us for that on November 17th. Enhancing Your Congregation's Educational Efforts on December 8th. That's Dr. Mark Blanke, Professor of Education at Concordia University, Nebraska. And you're right, Pastor. I can't miss the Corn Palace. I haven't been there in years, so I did see some pictures of it. I had a cousin go by there not too long ago. So we'll be rolling here in just a minute, I hope. Amy, we getting close?
No, I'm afraid it's a few more minutes.
Okay.
I heard you got broadband out there. I maybe not.
We have broadband, but it runs on a PTO off the back of a tractor. See, all the rural people know what a PTO is, so I can get away with
power takeoff. Come on, I know. I mean, I may be a suburbanite, but I did spend some time on the farm, so.
Thank you. Okay, folks, if you could just bear with us just a couple more minutes, we'll get this thing up and running.
Yeah. Well, if you want, Todd, I could kind of introduce what we'll be talking about today. And
please do.
Okay.
Well, actually, why don't I'll go ahead and I'll start us off with a prayer, and then you go and introduce, and we'll just see where we end up. How's that sound?
Oh, sounds great.
All right, let's pray. Gracious Lord, we give you thanks that you have gathered us to do the work that you have put forth for us in the church. And Lord, we know that in many and various ways you have brought us to do the things we do. And yet, Lord, sometimes things change, circumstances change, and we need to take a fresh look at the way we do things. But yet, Lord, wherever you are present, there is life and there is hope. And it is in that hope that we carry out the ministry you have called us to do. We give you thanks for Pastor Wood and the work that he has done in helping with revitalization of congregations. And we pray your blessing be upon our time in this webinar and all the ministries we represent. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen. And Reverend Mark Wood, Director of Witness and Outreach, and creator of Everyone His Witness and Revitality, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you. It's great to be with everybody today as we take a look at what revitalization is and how it can be of help to our rural and small town congregations. I've been with the Office of National Mission about 2 years, and there's 2 programs that Todd mentioned that I've been working on. And the first is an evangelism program that's really designed to help individual believers be more active and effective witnesses of Jesus in their everyday lives. And that's called Everyone His Witness. And then the program we will spend some time talking about today is called Revitality, and it's for congregational revitalization. The starting point of Revitality was the 2013 Synodical Convention, when a resolution passed which directed the Office of National Mission to provide resources for congregations for congregational renewal. So that's the starting point. We're a couple years into that now and are starting to provide resources to congregations, and I'll share a little bit about where we're at and what resources are currently available. One way to stay up to date on what we're doing is to like our Facebook page. So if you're a Facebook user and you want to see where we're at in the development of these 2 programs and where seminars are being held and whatnot, on Facebook, just search for LCMS Witness Outreach and Revitalization. And if you just put in LCMS Witness, you'll see it come up on your pick list. Like our page and stay in touch. And it looks like I have some more time to fill. My background is actually, I'm a second career pastor. I worked in the defense industry before going to the seminary and while going to the seminary. After completing the seminary, I was sent to Florida. So I was in the Tampa Bay area, first as the pastor of evangelism for an established congregation, and then as a church planter in a neighboring community. So I can still say today that I've been an active adult lay person in the LCMS longer than I've been a pastor. And I think that's helped me approach this from a more practical way, looking at it from a lay person's perspective. How can we do these things? And how to is a big emphasis in both our programs. Practical resources. Sometimes we hear people say, we've heard for years, what we ought to do and why we ought to do it. You have shown us how to do something. So that's I consider that a really high compliment, because that's really the objective. We're trying to provide resources that are practical, that help people actually do something. And I hope you see in the presentation today that we're meeting that objective, that the resources we're developing are practical. And not just practical for one kind of congregation, as Todd likes to pick on me because I am a suburbanite. Grew up in the Chicago suburbs. I've lived in suburban settings almost my whole life. My rural experience comes through my grandparents' farm in western Illinois, where I spent quite a bit of my summers out on the farm, doing farm stuff, and from chasing chickens around to weeding onions. So to this day, I still have an aversion to onions because of that experience. So I have some knowledge of urban or suburban living by my own experience, and also some knowledge of rural living through my grandparents' farm and that experience. So I know that what works in one place doesn't necessarily work in another. Yet, the mandate from the Synod was develop resources for the whole Synod. So as challenging as that could be, I think you'll find in here things that are transferable. So you can adapt them to your particular context. So whether you're in a rural setting, a suburban setting, an urban setting, these are principles that can be put into practice in any of those situations. Of course, adapting things to meet your needs is important, and we try to provide flexibility to do that. So we're not coming in and dictating specific actions that anyone has to take, but instead we're providing processes and tools, and then teaching you how to use those processes and tools so you can adapt them to your particular context. And I don't know what a corn palace is, but I see it's not something to be missed according to the chat line.
It is literally a palace made of corn.
Well, then it seems to be named appropriately.
We're getting close here.
We have
a couple more minutes. Maybe.
Maybe. Don't you love technology?
Sometimes
what's the next seminar?
In rural areas, as most of you that are on the webinar know, sometimes that power takeoff gets a little worn. I think maybe we've got a little slippage today. It seems our internet connection doesn't want to be very helpful to us.
So I think your next webinar, you should probably pay close attention to KFUO as they talk about using technology in your ministry. So,
Oh, Pastor Freilich says, do not take the word palace literally. That's
Well, I've learned not to take that word literally when I joined Office of National Mission and was moved into the Purple Palace, as I've heard the International Center referred to as the Purple Palace, and everything I see here is beige and is far from palatial. So I'm not sure where that title came from, actually. So we'll use the term loosely in regard to the Corn Palace then as well. So,
right.
So it looks like Terry Wurst is also a displaced Chicagoite, but he says Luther South would indicate a White Sox fan. Terry, for the sake of your soul and well-being, I hope that's not true. So and you may guess from that comment that I am a Cubs fan. It's been a lifelong burden that I bear. It's taught me the theology of the cross. This year they're flirting with the theology of glory, but every good Cubs fan knows that the collapse is coming. We just don't know when and where or how, but it's coming. So
they'll find some way to get out of it, won't they?
Absolutely. So
Terry, we'll even leave Ohio State Buckeye fans on the line, even though we know Iowa Hawkeyes are where it's at. But that's just, that's personal opinion. Always next year. Always next year.
Always next year. So, I'll just share this little theological insight. Being a Cubs fan my whole life has indeed kept sports in perspective for me. And I know one day the Cubs will get to the World Series. Maybe it'll be this year. I don't know. But one day they will. And on that day, I imagine it going down something like this. It's Game 7. It's Wrigley Field. The score is tied. It's the bottom of the ninth. There's nobody out. The bases are loaded. The Cubs, cleanup hitter gets up to the plate. The heater right down the center of the plate. It's the worst possible pitch a guy could have thrown. And this guy gets everything into it. I mean, this ball is crushed. And it's no doubt heading to Waveland Avenue. It is going through the sky. 3 feet short of the ivy, Jesus returns. So that's how I think it's going to happen. So Oh, look at this.
Hey,
we have a
looks like
webinar.
We've got your PowerPoint coming up.
All right. Good deal.
No more bad second coming jokes or Cub fans.
No, yeah. And if you didn't like that joke, email us.
In there with us. Take it away.
All right. And if you didn't like that joke, the email address is rstm@lcms.org. So, all right. Well, good to have our slides up, and let's get into our presentation then. And the first thing we're talking about is what is revitalization? And revitalization is about vitality. And you notice the name of the program it represents that. Revitality, the RE : regarding vitality. And a lot of people get hung up on what is this vitality, what's a vital congregation, and they want to talk about it in terms of numbers. And that's okay, because Jesus did too. He said, wherever 200 or 300 are gathered in my name, there I am with them also. But of course we know what he really said, 2 or 3. There's where vitality is found, because wherever Jesus is life. So what is revitalization then? It's not bringing life to a dead church, but rather it's amplifying the life of a living church. Wherever the word is proclaimed in truth and the sacraments are rightly ministered, there's life. There's the forgiveness of sins and life and salvation. Jesus is present with his people. And so one of the questions we ask in revitalization is, how do we increase that vitality that we already have, that life that's already here through the good gifts of God among ourselves, and share it with other people? Also, speaking of what revitalization is in terms of what it's not a work that we do using human methods, but it's a work that God does through us in word and sacrament. So when I say word and sacrament, and we talk about this in workshops, it's the means of grace. Word and sacrament ministry. It's what the Holy Spirit's going to use to bring life and salvation to us. So, but at the same time, there is a place for us to make use of what God's invested in us in our first article gifts. So it doesn't depend on human methods, but revitalization makes use of these first article gifts. One of our foundational verses in revitalization is the passage from 1 Corinthians 3, where Paul, writing to the Corinthians saying, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. And so we talk about the work we do in revitalization as focused on planting and watering as we expect God to give growth. Now, since I am a suburbanite, I won't pretend to talk about agriculture with people serving in rural communities. But even the least indoctrinated of us understand that planting and nurturing, planting and watering precedes the growth. There is no harvest without the planting and the watering. But our role in revitalization isn't to be all focused on the outcomes, trying to force things to happen, but rather to be focused on what we're called to do, planting and watering, using what God's invested in us, especially our first article gifts. So we can ask the question, what earthly gifts can we employ to gather others into the word and sacrament ministry of our congregation? And revitalization is not a new way of being church, something that I frequently heard as a church planter. We need a new way of being church. Rather, it's being the church we are in new ways. We're Lutherans, that we shouldn't be ashamed of that. It's not anything to be ashamed of. In fact, we should be proud of it. What we have in terms of a church and our doctrine and practice are wonderful gifts that have been handed down from previous generations. The world around us has changed, however. That doesn't mean that we should change who we are. We don't change our doctrine. We don't change who we are to appease the culture. At the same time, we have to think of how has the culture changed and how do we engage our culture. And so be the church we are, but find new ways to engage the people in our culture. Now, a lot of that change has happened in our own communities. So around our churches, the communities have changed to the point where we could hardly recognize them. And so we need to ask the question, who in our community does not know the grace that we enjoy as Lutherans? So we begin to think about who they are and how do we engage them? How do we be a church that we already are in new ways? Some may ask, why should we even revitalize? Isn't it better just to let churches run their course, have their life cycle, so to speak, die with dignity, and then bring in something new? Well, there's a lot of practical reasons why that is not a good idea, why we can't just let churches die off and put new things there. I think especially as you think of rural communities where you may lose a congregation in one town and it may be many miles to the next LCMS congregation, and we lose our presence in that community, and it's probably a permanent loss. There isn't going to be some new church planter come in and start a new church where the old one has run its course. So in a community that has a church that's declining, we also look at the practical reason of helping restore that church to health and vitality. And that's through the fact that that church is already a part of that community. If we close it and start something new, the new thing is new to the community. It may not be accepted. It may be considered an outsider. Yet a church, even a church that's become kind of marginal in the community, through revitalization starts to become more active in the community. The people in the community recognize, no, this church has been here a long time. It's part of our community. They're doing something new, but they're not new. And so there's a level of acceptance of that church being active in the community. Of course, planting new churches is a very expensive proposition. There's a cost of acquiring property, building, etc., where an existing church already has facilities, it has a location, it has property. So there's practical reasons to focus on revitalization versus letting things run their course and just letting congregations die off so we can start new ones. But I think there's a better reason, an overriding reason to the practical reasons, and that's understanding that every congregation is an instance of the body of Christ in a place. And the church is the bride of Christ. And the bride of Christ is worthy of our efforts to support, sustain, and preserve her wherever she exists, especially when she's under the cross. So we don't write out a certificate of divorce to the bride of Christ because she's grown old or weak. Instead, we do whatever we can in our planting and watering to sustain the bride of Christ and to make her strong and healthy. And so keeping that in mind, we may go beyond some practical considerations to revitalize because the church is the church, worthy of it. I should also point out that revitalization is nothing new, even though it's kind of a hot topic right now in church circles. It's something that's been going on a long time. In fact, as a church planter, I was always told that the book of Acts is a church planter's manual. In reality, while there's some church planting going on in the book of Acts, the majority of the book of Acts is about revitalizing. As Paul prepared to go on his missionary journeys after the first one, he had a very clearly stated purpose. And we find that in Acts 18 and verse 23. It says, let's go, strengthen the brothers. And he went out spending time going around where churches were already established, strengthening the disciples. So revitalization is something that's always ongoing in the church. And every congregation really has need of the things that we do under the umbrella of revitalization. And lastly, I'd say revitalization really is something that calls for repentance. Repentance in the sense of turning away from. There are things that are causing the decline of the church. Often there are things that are within our control. Sometimes they're not. But often there are things that we have brought on through our action or inaction. And so we need to turn away from that and turn towards those things that bring greater vitality to our congregation especially as we connect with our communities. And so there's place in this repentance for us to confess our sins of neglect, our self-centeredness, or inward focus, or whatever other things have contributed to the decline. And of course, Luther's first of his 95 Theses was a reminder to us that the whole of Christian life is a life of repentance. So collectively, as we look at our congregation and where we're at and what's going on, there's a time and place for repentance to get us back on track, moving in the right direction. So how do we do this revitalization thing? What are the pieces, and how does it help us? In the first place, revitality has a component that helps us answer the question, where are we really? Of course, I'm not speaking geographically. I'm speaking about where are we as a congregation? How well are we doing? What does it look like? And this is a self-assessment tool. And a self-assessment tool that we've developed allows the congregation to use objective measuring tools without outside assistance in order to determine where we are in our stage of vitality. It's something the congregation initiates, so it doesn't get directed from on high from a district office or synod office, but the congregation begins it. It's confidential. The congregation doesn't have to share the results with anybody. If they decide to act on the results, then obviously they need to be shared as a way of moving forward. But your report doesn't go to your district president or circuit visitor. It's your information for your use. And it's not a grade, so nobody's judging the congregation. It's not saying you're failing or doing anything wrong. It's just an assessment of where are we really. And that's an important question. Where are we really? Now, assessing is often a little troubling for people. What is it going to measure, and what is it going to say, and what are we supposed to do with it? But it's very important. It's a very important first step in taking effective action, because assessment provides the proper diagnosis for the proper remedies. So if you were to go in and visit your doctor, and you say, Doc, I've got this pain in my lower back. It just started a couple weeks ago, but it doesn't seem to want to go away. He goes, well, that's really interesting. I'm scheduling you for surgery tomorrow afternoon. You may not want to go to that surgery. You want the doctor to examine you. You probably want an MRI or an X-ray or something, not just, wow, you got a pain in your back, let's go to surgery. So sometimes we do that in the church, though. We say, well, the congregation's struggling here or there, and it's like, oh, well, we need to go do this. Wait a minute. We need to figure out where we're really at, what's going on before we start applying remedies. So the self-assessment tool provides that opportunity to stop and assess and figure out what are the contributing factors to where we're at and what are the proper courses of action to follow. And so assessing ourselves provides that. Using an objective tool helps keep it meaningful. And as self-assessment, it means you don't have to have somebody come from the outside to make that that diagnosis for you. It's something you can do using the tool by yourselves, and it helps out because self-assessment isn't constrained by the capacity of outside people coming in. There's a limited number of experts who can come to congregations and do assessments. So you don't have to stand in line behind all the others. You can execute this on your own schedule. It's also cost effective because you don't have consultants coming. We have to pay their fees and their travel costs, etc. And I hope it's non-threatening. Any self-assessment is just that. It's a self-assessment. You don't have to be afraid of the results. You don't have to worry about them being used by other people. And so non-threatening because you're in control. And it's objective. It doesn't depend on how people feel about things, but there's always an element of subjectivity because people are answering questions, but the questions have been constructed in a way that keeps them objective as it can be. And these questions, by the way, were developed in collaboration with a behavioral scientist at one of our Concordia universities to ensure that they were valid questions to be asked and that they provide meaningful results. The assessment really ends up coming back to the congregation as a snapshot. And, you know, any kind of I know it's an old term, especially with digital photography and all that, but we all understand what that means. It's just a picture of where we are right now at this point in time. And it's going to change. It's also very brief. A snapshot is not in depth. It's just one image of a situation. And so in the stages of congregational vitality, we get a point on a plot curve. Now, the plot curve here, you see on the slide, it's the standard S curve. You know, it's been used in a lot of different ways. I've written an entire white paper on this thing. So if you really want to know more about the curve and what's gone into it, where it comes from, etc., let me know, and you can read a white paper, or you can try to read it and stay awake. But here's the main idea of this is not that you get a big detailed report back, you know, analyzing each of the 100 questions and who answered them and demographic breakdowns and statistical analysis of all that information. That's all there, but if we get into all that, we're going to be distracted by all that analysis. You know, if you want your next 18 months of council meetings to be nothing but analysis of this report, you probably need more than revitalization. Instead, what we provide is one of these terms to say, based on the information that was provided, your congregation is at one of these stages of vitality. And the terms have been picked to be meaningful, descriptive, but not judgmental. So a lot of our congregations, for instance, are in an early stage of decline that is actually labeled as tapering. So that's just a description of what's happening. Things are tapering. So these terms were carefully crafted to convey a message. There's the difference between this curve, though, and a standard life cycle is you see arrows going both ways. At any point on this curve, up until the very end, there's always the hope of renewal, of revitalization. And if we take the appropriate actions in time with God's blessings, there's an opportunity to restore the vitality and viability to our congregations. So this assessment guides us in our revitalization efforts to do just that, to do what Jesus said to the churches in Revelation, wake up and strengthen what remains. This is an actual assessment report. This is what came back, and other than the key that explains what these terms are, this is all there is to the report. Again, the idea of the report is to give you a snapshot so you can take action, not a bunch of information so you can contemplate it. In this congregation, their plot point is indicated by, it's a little hard to see, but it's an asterisk, and that asterisk indicates it corresponds to that plot on the curve, and in this case it's tapering. But you see other contributing factors, and as you go across that curve, you see which ones are having greater impact on the status of the congregation. And again, difficult to read, but the one that's furthest to the right is the one having the greatest impact on the vitality of the congregation, and that's inactives. And in this particular congregation had twice as many inactive members as it did have people in active worship. So it was interesting how that, and this chart came out after I learned that fact, and I thought, well, that's interesting that it actually substantiates what I know to be true about the congregation. The other one, the one immediately to the left of that, another contributing factor, are finances. Right? So all these come into play to, as answering that question, where are we really? And then now what do we do about it? Because each one of these factors has a corresponding training module that we'll talk about next. So this guides you on what should we be doing here. So obviously this congregation should take a look at their inactives and what can we do about that. Their finances. How do we manage our finances? That may involve strategic planning. On the other hand, one of the strength areas is family. So without neglecting family, they don't have to necessarily focus on that as they revitalize because it's already strong. So this self-assessment guides us in dealing with first things first in terms of what are the most significant contributors to the congregation's current stage of vitality and how do we address that to improve the vitality and viability. So revitalization provides training for action. All right, so we're not just doing assessments for the sake of assessments. We want to do something about it. And this means change. If we want different results, it means we have to do some things differently. So some change is coming. Our training approach is focused on action. So it's not simply education or instruction. The workshops that we conduct are not simply somebody standing there with PowerPoint slides telling you a bunch of stuff and then expecting you to act on it. The typical workshop will actually be a one-day workshop, maybe split over 2 half days. And for example, the Connect to Disciple workshop is about a 7-hour workshop, 90 minutes of instruction. The rest of the time is spent on adult learning activities using your own congregation's information. So it's training, not simply education. It talks about the what and the why of a particular topic, but it really focuses on the how or the how-to of the topic. So we use workshops that are video-based. We have standardized instruction that's presented by a subject matter expert, somebody who really knows what they're talking about on that particular subject. And we use adult learning methods, which provides for interactive exercises, real-life content. And the workshops are led by trained and certified facilitators. And then after the workshop, a coach helps the congregation develop an implementation plan and then put what was learned in the workshop into practice. So it's not a workshop that ends when the classroom portion is over. The module continues through a period of coaching. So we put things into practice before we move on to the next module. So the case of our congregation that we saw the self-assessment for, they may focus first on their inactive ministry. Well, they have a workshop, they learn how to do some things, then their coach helps them put an implementation plan together, and then they do it. And after some number of months, 3-6 months, when they've met their implementation objectives, then they can look at doing the next workshop to address the next topic. So training leads to action. These are the modules in the Revitality program. We have 10 of them on the drawing board in the first phase. There'll be new modules added as time goes on. The first module is called Connect to Disciple, and it's focused on congregational outreach. And this module has been completed and field tested and is in production. And we're currently training facilitators and coaches in the districts to implement this workshop. It really has become the prerequisite workshop for everything else so that we have a good, solid foundation and understanding of outreach before we go off and do these other things. 3 modules that are currently in production. Joining in God's Mission as a strategic planning module. Dr. Larry Rast, president of Fort Wayne Seminary, is the subject matter expert in that video instruction portion of that. That should be rolling out in early 2017. Shepherding the Strays, which is our inactive ministry module, it's in a late stage of production, and it's actually scheduled for its first piloting workshop on January 7th. So that will become widely available during the first quarter of next year. And Members of One Body, which is an assimilation and incorporation module, is going to be videotaped at the end of this month. So it's in production, but a kind of mid-stage production right now. As Iron Sharpens Iron is a module on conflict resolution, and we're partnering with Ambassadors of Reconciliation to be our subject matter experts on that module. And then the other modules will be developed next year. So by the end of 2017, we expect all 10 of these modules to be available. You also see in that the Outreach Integrated Witnessing, which is an important part of revitalization. It's equipping our lay people to be the witnesses they're called to be in their everyday lives. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Revitalization also helps our congregations go beyond current and usual limits. Now, what do I mean by current and usual limits, and what is that? It really comes from the definition of outreach. So in the dictionary, it says that outreach is about engaging people with a product or service outside of current and usual limits. In our case, we talk about a congregation saying we want to engage people who are outside of the church, and so we have this work that we're doing as the church, seeking to engage people who are currently outside of the church. Serving people inside of the church is not outreach, it's inreach. Now, notice the word church is capitalized here. So we're talking about people outside of any Christian congregation. And so going down the street and trying to recruit the Presbyterians to become Lutherans is not outreach. Outreach is going outside of the church to bring the good news of Jesus to people who do not believe in him and do not confess him. So the collective effort of believers is another part of that definition. The collective effort. Outreach is something we do as the church gathered. It's the congregation's attempts to connect with people who are outside of the church. That's distinct from witness, which is about our individual effort, and we'll talk more about that a little bit. So outreach revolves around this one question. How do we extend the means of grace to people outside of our congregation? Or you can even say outside of the church. How do we bring them the life and salvation that the Holy Spirit works, when and where he wills, and those who hear his word. And so we're always trying to reach new people, trying to go beyond the current and usual limits, whether those limits have been imposed on us from the outside or whether those limits are things we've imposed on ourselves. So we want to go beyond that to reach new people. The focus of outreach is that passage from 1 Corinthians, where it's on planting and watering. Sometimes when I meet with people and talk about revitalization, it becomes apparent that the desired outcome of outreach for them is to get more people in the pews because they need more dollars in the plate. So their motive is really based on helping the congregation survive. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting more people in the pews, but that's an outcome that's beyond our control. We plant, we water, God gives the growth. We don't want to force the results. In fact, we don't even necessarily want to focus on the results. We want to focus on what we're called to do, planting, watering. So we reach out beyond the current and usual limits to bring the good news of Jesus to people who are outside of the church and seek to gather them with us. Maybe, it'll mean more people in the pews, and maybe it'll mean more dollars in the plate. But that's something we have to trust God, the Holy Spirit, to provide. We need to be faithful in our planting and watering outside of those current and usual limits. To that end, we build the revitalization around an outreach strategy, which is simply create connections, build relationships, make disciples. The create connection is the seed planting, if you will. It's finding ways to interact with people who are outside of the church, that is, beyond current and usual limits. The build relationships is the watering or the nurturing, where once we've connected with people, we can become actively involved with them and build relationships with people who don't know us and build mutual trust and respect on the basis of which then people can be invited and encouraged to join us in the Word and Sacrament ministry of our congregation, where the Holy Spirit makes disciple through the means of grace. So there you see the outreach strategy fits that 1 Corinthians 3 passage. And this is not a dictated strategy. This is the working strategy. It can be adapted to a particular context. The words can be changed. It can be added to or taken from, and whatever serves best in your context. But it should be based on that understanding, first of all, that outreach is going beyond current usual limits, reaching people who are outside the church, and that it's about the planting and watering we're called to do, not forcing the results that we desire. And lastly, I think is the last part, is revitalization enables us to do what we're meant to do. And what are we meant to do? Well, Martin Luther, in his sermon on 1 Peter, had this quote. It's not in his American edition, but it is included in a little book called The Church Comes from All Nations. He said, "We live on earth only so that we should be a help to other people. Otherwise, it would be best if God would strangle us and let us die as soon as we are baptized and had begun to believe. For this reason, however, he lets us live, that we may bring other people also to faith as he has done for us." So here we see the stated purpose from Luther's perspective. The only reason, the one reason that we're here in this world, the reason God leaves us in this world is so that other people will come to faith as we have come to faith. This is the help that we're to give. It's the highest help. It's the greatest mercy that we can show anybody else, is to let them know of life and salvation through the forgiveness of sins won for us by the blood of Jesus. And this is why we're here. This is why God's put us here. This is why he leaves us here. And he even goes on to say, everything then should be directed in such a way that you recognize what God has done for you, and that you thereafter make it your highest priority to proclaim this publicly and call everyone to the light to which you are called. So Luther mixes stewardship and evangelism together, and rightly so, because everything God has put into our lives is to the end that other people would come to know of Christ and believe in him. Everything God's invested in you, in the people you serve, in the congregation as a whole, everything entrusted to us is so other people would come to faith in Christ. And it should be our highest priority above everything else. And this is all based on 1 Peter 2:9, which is the foundational verse of the Everyone is Witness evangelism program. We're a people called to proclaim the excellencies of him who has called us out of darkness into his marvelous light. So this is our purpose. And so witness is really the purpose of our everyday life. It's not scripted. It's not contrived. It's not pigeonholed. It's something God sends us out into the world to do in the context of our everyday lives, our vocations, with the very people that God has put into our lives. So all of us know people who are not churched, people who are outside of those current and usual limits that we know so well. And he's put us into their lives so that just as we have received mercy, they might receive mercy. So we would proclaim to them the excellencies of him who's called us out of darkness into his marvelous light. And the reality is, if we're not going to do this, all the other things we do for revitalization will come to nothing. So a lot of our revitalization program, the Revitality, is focused on, equipping people to do this thing we're called to do, the one reason we're left in the world, to do what we need to do as the church gathered, so that as the church scattered, people will come to hear of Christ through us. Our vocations then provide us with the relationships that we need for witnessing. Again, we don't have to go out and create new relationships. We have relationships with non-church, non-believing people in our lives already. It doesn't matter how large your community is or how small your community is. We all, through our vocations, are interacting with people who haven't yet heard the gospel or haven't yet believed the gospel. And the fact that we're still here is evidence enough of that. And it's because, as Luther said, the only reason God leaves us in this world is to this end. Keeping in mind that witnessing is all about Jesus, and this is something we expand out in the Everyone is Witness workshop, and it's about Jesus coming to, being present with, delivering, and making people whole. Not in person anymore like he did, and we talk about this in Mark chapter 5 particularly, where in his earthly ministry he did this in person himself. Now he does it through his church, through us. And so congregations exist so others could hear of Jesus. Congregations exist so others can be made whole through the good gifts that he brings through his church. And so sometimes people will say, well, you're too worried about congregations. We should be more focused on kingdom growth. And the reality is kingdom growth is the objective. It's the desired outcome of all this. But kingdom growth happens when congregations grow. There's no kingdom growth without congregation growth. So we need to be faithful to the communities in which God has placed us, with the people with whom he's put us into relationships. This is where we are. This is the work that we have before us. By bringing new people into the congregation, the kingdom is growing. And to that end, it's important to realize that witnessing is more than telling people about Jesus. It's connecting people to Jesus. And nobody was meant to be a believer, in a me and Jesus sort of way. Believers are meant to be in fellowship with Christ and with other believers. And so we're more than tellers, we're connectors. And we're specifically connectors to the church. And the church that we connect people to is the local congregation. So as we go out as individual witnesses, we're not on our own. We're part of the church. We're the church scattered into the world so that we can gather others with us. So of course the Holy Spirit does the gathering, but he does it through us. And it's to connect people to a local congregation. We're at the altar and pulpit of that congregation. They can continue to receive the good gifts of God, the means of grace. It's not found anywhere else. And this is an important part of both evangelism and revitalization, to recognize there's no substitute for these gifts. And so Cyprian said, rightly so, he can no longer have God for his father who has not the church for his mother. And so we want to bring people into this community of faith where they can be nurtured and grow. And so witness then extends the outreach of our congregation. Congregations as entities have limited spheres of influence in their communities, much smaller today than it used to be. But when we start seeing our individual members as ambassadors, not only of Christ, but of his body in this place, the local congregation, that reach is extended far beyond that sphere of influence into the whole community and even beyond the community. So witness and outreach go together, and both are critically important parts of revitalization. And so the Everyone is Witness evangelism program is integrated into this. It builds on it. It's a very important part of revitalization. And it uses something called the LASSIE Approach. And if you want to know more about that, well, we'll have to do another webinar because I'm just about out of time. But you'll hear more about the LASSIE Approach and Everyone is Witness as the Synod rolls this out as our official evangelism program. And for more information about Revitality and Everyone is Witness, there's some information on our website. Feel free to email us at witness-outreach@lcms.org, And, of course, as I mentioned earlier, our Facebook page. Like us. It affirms us. It makes us feel good about ourselves. And we want more likes than Todd has. So thank you for your time and attention.
Well, good luck with that. Yeah, we want you to go on and like that Facebook page. That's great information, Mark. Thank you so much. A wonderful program, Revitality. And I especially appreciate, Mark, and we've talked about this before, you're emphasizing the fact that we can't let churches die off. When we lose that real estate, we lose that presence in that area, and we cannot, and I was just talking to some folks, well, we were just talking to some folks here at a training that both of us were at on coaching of all things. We cannot allow this mentality of, well, we'll just hang on, hunker down, hang on, and we'll just see who's the last one to turn the lights off. That's just not what we're all about as church.
True.
Now, a couple of things, and maybe just to reiterate, you were so thorough that I really don't have any questions. I don't see anybody. Well, the one question we've got, absolutely, Kevin, we'll get you a copy of these slides. In fact, at the end of this webinar, when we sign off, you'll get a link to download the slides from the PowerPoint. You will also get a survey, if you wouldn't mind filling that out for us as well. So you'll get both those things. But just to maybe to re-emphasize a couple of points, Mark. I know sometimes folks are reticent to get involved in something like a Revitality because they're afraid of somebody looking over their shoulder. You did mention the confidentiality, that the reports don't have to go out, but maybe just again re-emphasize that when you have the reporting done, and that reporting can be used to move forward. So it's not necessarily a reporting thing or someone looking over their shoulder, but just using those results to move forward. If you could maybe just emphasize that again for us.
Yeah, I liken it to the horrible experience of going to a shopping mall with my wife. When I walk in the shopping mall, I'm looking at the directory to find out where is the one store that has the item that I came to the mall for. And I'm on that directory. They have that little symbol that says you are here. So if I'm trying to go to Sears to get a part for the lawnmower, I need to know where am I in order to get to Sears. I won't even talk about how my wife goes about a shopping mall experience. But if we're going to do revitalization, we need that same starting point. And nobody really wants somebody to come in from the outside and go digging around to figure out where that starting point is. I mean, imagine what it's like. I'm going to invite the district president or the district mission exec to come in and look at my congregation and find out everything that's, quote, wrong. Who wants that? So the idea here is let us figure out using this tool where we are so we can get to where we want to be without having somebody else come in and figure it out for us. And then what? Then what are they going to do with that?
Very good. Yeah, I think it's so important for folks to know that this isn't that Big Brother kind of a scenario. It gives us a starting place, but there's not going to be there shouldn't be or doesn't have to be any fear in engaging in this process. It's only going to be a good thing. Kind of the other side, or not the other side, but a complementary thing to that is so often we do these things, we go through an assessment process, we maybe even do a little planning, but that accountability piece, that call to action that you talked about earlier, I think that's such a huge part of things. And the fact that we can move from facilitating to coaching and get into that action piece, that's so important for accountability. If you could kind of reiterate on that too.
Yeah, accountability is such a harsh word, Todd. I like the word encouragement.
There you go.
There's a place for accountability, of course, and that comes through the coaching element, where the coach is there to help you do what you set out to do. I mean, you took the workshop, you spent the time in the workshop, you gathered people together and all that, not just to say, hey, we did a workshop, it's because you wanted to do something with it. But there's all sorts of obstacles to doing that. And a coach is there to come alongside of you and be that encourager to help you through the challenges. And yes, when you're not doing what you're supposed to do, to hold you accountable. And so the coaching relationship is going to be such an important part of this, because we've all had that experience where we started down the path of something we thought was really good, we really wanted to do it, but then the tyranny of the urgent comes in, and all those other things rush into our lives that displace it. And, the coach is there to help you see through that and stay on track. And I should mention this. I don't know if anybody is wondering, well, how much is all this going to cost? Well, this is a Synod program, and it's your Synod, and it's your Synod dollars at work. There's no cost to congregations to participate in Revitality. Now, somewhere down the line, we're going to have to find a permanent funding model, because there are expenses for facilitators and coaches and whatnot. But as it stands right now, we're able to bring these resources to congregations at no cost to the congregation. There'll probably in the future be marginal costs for the materials and some travel and whatnot. But we're trying to keep the cost as low as possible, because I'm sure some of the people listening are probably saying, oh, this all sounds really good, but I don't have thousands of dollars sitting around to pay somebody to come help me do a workshop or pay for a coach. Maybe I don't have hundreds of dollars. Maybe I don't even have ones of dollars for this. We understand that, and we're trying to bring these resources to you at the lowest possible cost. And right now, it can't get any lower. The Synod itself is absorbing the costs. So.
Yeah, and just for the record, we aren't going to start paying people to go through Revitality. We maybe have to draw the line there.
Yeah.
Just a couple of questions that have come up now. What's the anticipated time frame for the rest of the modules?
Well, they'll be rolled out incrementally. We're hoping that we can finish these 10 by the end of next year. But here's the reality. If a congregation wanted to start Revitality today, they'd start with the assessment, the self-assessment. It would be at least January, probably February, before they could do the first workshop, which is Connect to Disciple. Then they've got 3 to 6 months of implementation of Connect to Disciple before they move to the next module. So nobody can get ahead of us at this stage. Even if we fall behind schedule, there are enough modules in place or in process to stay ahead of a congregation that would enter into the program today.
Excellent. Yes, Mark, I think Amy responded to this about rewatching the webinar. Absolutely, on our archive, on our website, you can go to that, and I encourage you to do so. In fact, on the archive, there's another webinar back in the 2015 archives of webinars that Mark Wood did for us on overcoming bad experiences. That actually has a little information on LASSIE. So, but I suspect here in the near future we can redo something there too, so we can get more information out on that. And from Jeff Lee up in Minnesota, where are we at in training people in all districts to be facilitators for Revitalize, for Revitality, and the evangelism program? I assume he means they're the Everyone His Witness.
Yes. The short answer is not where we want to be. Everything's taking longer than we'd like it to. So we have a first group of facilitators that came to a training event in May who are now going through the field experience of actually conducting workshops. And it's just been difficult to get everybody through those hoops. So we've actually contracted with a person who's working with Office of National Mission now to be our national trainer. And as soon as we get this person fully trained and ready to go, she'll be contacting people, including you, Jeff, to schedule another training event and to get some field training accomplished so we can multiply our facilitators. So I expect she'll be fully trained up and ready to go in November. So I'm thinking right after the first of the year, we're going to be planning our next training event.
And another question, are the 10 modules in the order they would be done?
No, they're not. It's the ones on the top are the ones in process, so those will be available first. But the rest of them are really based on a couple of factors. One is what is the need, and what's the availability of subject matter experts. So we've already rearranged the production. Partly, like the Iron Sharpens Iron was moved up because of our partnership with Ambassadors of Reconciliation. We hadn't anticipated that. So we're rearranging the order of development based on any number of factors. There's nothing magical about the list. And we started with the ones we thought would have the greatest impact and the most number of congregations would want to make use of. So I'm eager to get all of them done. I think there's something there for everybody. So.
Excellent. I agree. Well, seeing no other questions, again, thank you, Mark. Fantastic stuff. Thank you for your work on Revitality and everyone has witnessed. This has been I think, a great step forward for us as Synod together and for our congregations, especially for those of us in rural and small town areas. What a blessing this will be. And also, God's blessings to all of you as you carry out that work in the places where God has called you to do that. Remember to fill out that survey and look for that link. And don't be afraid to get on and check out our archives. And one last word, get on Facebook and like our Facebook page. And God's blessings to you all. We'll see you later.
Peace be with you.